is in a deep recession, has actually seen its currency appreciate by about 24.9%. So, you know, and what I'm saying is that focusing entirely on the currency problem without focusing on economic activity, which means creating jobs, and how will it affect the other man, all of this economic jargon is of no interest. What the common man wants to know is that when will things be better for me? Right? I think that's the issue.
Well, Mr. Rwani, you just have to hold your thoughts there. My colleague Bosin Omofe is out there listening in Abuja. Bosin, I'm sure you're listening to Mr. Rwani. I'm sure you have a question for him.
Yes, thank you, Chimeze. Mr. Rwani, we've spoken so much about the currency side of things, but talk us through the two PMI numbers that we saw that came in a little bit positive, showing that the manufacturing activity seems to be recovering. Now, if you what's your outlook based on this PMI, even though it came in April, as far as first quarter GDP was concerned, we don't have the numbers yet from the LBS, and put that as an outlook for the second quarter GDP for the economy.
Well, I think the PMI is indicative. Again, it shows inventory levels, it shows level of output and level of employment. I think that what is happening here is that it's good news because if the PMI increases this month, it means that you begin to see output increase in another month or two ahead of time. We are optimistic that in Q1 numbers that are going to come out in May, on May 30th, will show that GDP growth in the first quarter, because of all of these activities, would have increased by at least 0.5%, and the second quarter will be up by about 1.5%. That's our hope, and that's our view, and that's our prayer. But let us go back and see what happened in Q1 last year compared to Q2 this year. You'll find that in Q1 last year, the average price of oil was $35 a barrel. This year, the average price was $54 a barrel, almost 60% higher. Oil production last year was about 1.79. Oil production this quarter was about 1.41. So even though the oil production was down, the price increase of about 60% more than made up on our revenue side. The invisibles that the central bank put into the market at $3.5 billion last year. In spite of that amount, the spread between the naira fell to 520. They put more money last year into an imperfect market because they had the official rate at 199. This year, because they had actually devalued the currency by way of a crawling peg, by putting $2.41 billion in, the spread between both rates narrowed to 100 naira, and we're able to achieve at least almost a 25 to 30% appreciation. Why? Because the official rate was allowed to flow downwards. So in effect, what we had was a better managed floating rate than a rigid fixed rate, which only led to arbitrage last year. This year, I think we had more sense. Last year, there was what we call forex insanity. So this year, we're in a better place. And that is why the outlook for next quarter is that we think that the Central Bank of Nigeria will have no choice but to allow more participants in the market, that is oil companies, that will allow a tacit crawling peg situation where the currency would depreciate somewhat so that it doesn't have to continually sustain and intervene in the market. The level of intervention and the frequency of intervention is too much. Normally in a market like that, you allow that to happen when it passes a particular threshold. We believe that with the investor and export window that you will see greater interest, and so if you see effectively a rate of about 350 to 375, close enough to 380, and you will see that the other market will begin to appreciate. So if you achieve a convergence of anything about 10-15%, then people will be more comfortable, investors will put money into the market, and you will see this actually begin to see an increase in economic activity. But however, Bosin, the point is that if you look at all of this...
we have about 3 minutes to wrap up this conversation. Very quickly, I'm in Abuja here where politics is the order of the day. This is where political governance for Nigeria is taking place. As we speak now, the third quarterly business forum is going on with the acting president, Oshibajo, at the head of the table, meeting with some ministers to talk the state of the business. Now, are you comfortable with what the fiscal side of the governance is doing in the countdown to May 29, second anniversary of the Buhari's administration administration, do you think this is very important to where the economy goes in the second quarter and the other half of 2017?
I am comfortable, but three things have to happen. One, and it's not fiscal, monetary, you have to bring down those interest rates. With these interest rates where they are, you are not going to get an expansion in economic activity. So we have to overcome the fear that if interest rates come down or move in that direction and there's extra liquidity in the system by reducing the CRR, you will see that there's a fear that that will make the currency depreciate. If the currency is going to depreciate marginally to give us economic activity so that we can get people to work, get jobs, get unemployment down, so be it. Secondly, the budget of 2017 needs to be approved. Not only approved, we have to get ready for a supplementary budget because the amount in question, 7 trillion naira compared to 6 trillion naira in 2016, is actually a contraction. It's equivalent of $27 billion, while we spent $30 billion last year. We need to be audacious enough to spend more. Thirdly, and more importantly, is that we need to engage and make sure that the Niger Delta oil production stays constant. Without that, all bets are off. So if all of these things happen, I'm optimistic that we'll see a sustained economic trajectory which will actually lead to inclusive growth. And therefore, the misery index will decline, anxiety will give way to hope, and hope will give way to actions.
Now, Mr. Ruwani, the MPC, of course, is preparing to meet sometime later this month. Now, looking at all the variables you've talked about, all the developments in the economy, the inflation rate, your forecast is saying that it's going to come down. What do you think the committee will do this time?
Well, the committee, one member has left, Sarah has left. I think there are probably more hawks than doves. I think people are more nervous about inflation than considering growth. The political equation in Nigeria is such that we're going into an electoral cycle starting after May 29. It's all about jobs. You cannot have jobs if interest rates don't come down. People would rather have jobs than worry about inflation. So if the trade-off is between growth and inflation in an electoral cycle, I suspect that there will be a token movement in favor of a lowering or a change of direction to a more accommodative stance. But, we never know. We keep our fingers crossed.
Sure, we will always keep our fingers crossed and hope for the best. Thank you very much, Mr. Ruwani, for your time. Well, that was Bismarck Ruwani, CEO of Financial Derivatives Company. Back to you now, Bosun.
Conversation. Thank you, Chima. It's a very interesting conversation with Bismarck. Of course, the MPC meeting is very key as everyone looks at what happens to interest rate. How will the MPC decide on the other financial either ratio, what you call the liquidity ratio, the cash reserve ratio when they meet? That will be very key. Of course, the currency. So let's take a break. When we come back, of course, we're looking at the markets.